Another week, another few dollars. How are you, sir, or should I say, counsellor?
Should you? I don't know. Yes, indeed. I'm very well, thank you, Squire.
You recently have just gone through a political thing of trying. Well, you got voted in
I know, it's
to
terrible,
become a
isn't it?
counsellor, did you not?
I did indeed. And how fortunate am I?
Well, I pity the ones you have to work for, but we've talked about that off air.
They're very fortunate to have a man of my calibre.
Well, officially to air, congratulations, and I am bowing.
You may stop genuflecting now, Squire.
Yes, order. Since you've experienced what it's like, and now that you're in that kind of muck-raking kind of arena, we could talk about politics, but specifically what's always in the news, whether you're left or whether you're right, and of course there is the centre. And I came across this wonderful quote. It's actually from the Philippines, but you could equate this to anywhere.
Yep.
And it goes like this. The brain of a Filipino, or put down whatever politician country you want, has two sides. The left has nothing right in it, and the right has nothing left in it.
Like it. It's good.
But is it out of date?
What, politics?
Left, right and centre.
Politics is often out of date. Traditional left, centre, right spectrum, well, is it out of date? Well, I guess understand where it came from.
French Revolution.
Yeah, French Revolution, the seating arrangement of the French National Assembly, all the way back to the 1790s. Now, I bet you not many people knew that.
No.
I bet nobody knew what it meant, why it was done that way. And so for over 2 centuries, this has served as a shorthand for deep ideological divides, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Progress and tradition, equality, hierarchy, state control, market freedom. But understanding where it came from, right there, right back to the French. So that means we can blame the French, can't we?
We can. Any chance we can blame the
Any chance
French.
the British can blame the French, the
That's
better.
right.
Well, probably not the British, because the Scots got in bed with them, didn't they?
Fish and chips.
Yeah, there we go.
Interesting you talked about the French Revolution. Louis XVI, when he was still in charge, he was in the middle, and those associated with him were around him. But those that were interested in the people went to the left, and those who wanted to maintain control through organisations and bureaus, as they were called, were to the right. And that's carried on, hasn't it? So that the centre tends to be the status quo, where the left people are equal, and the right, they're more into ranked due to their standing historically, or in terms of having authority through kind of things you do.
Yeah, that's right. As I say, it's that divide between what you would see as progress, and the left have always been seen to be the progressive wing. The right have always been seen to be the traditional side of the fence, the more conservative side of the fence. The left, as I said, has always been seen to be equality amongst everybody. It's all very equal. There is no one greater than the other. All pigs are equal. And the right has been far more hierarchical. State control for the left, far more sort of socialist-y, nanny sort of government type of thing. And the right has historically always been about market freedoms, ensuring that the central government don't become too big for its boots.
Yeah.
But the question for me, as we sort of reflected on this, is in the 21st century, in what we live in, which is effectively a global village, because everything is so interconnected these days, how does that framework set 200 centuries ago capture the reality of politics today? Do you think it does?
No, I don't think it does. The problem is, when you think about the left, centre and right, they're all on the same level.
Yeah.
There's no nuance as to status. So someone said it's really now top, bottom and middle, or the elites against the people like the rest of us. You could argue that's where we're going. But there are reasons why it's no longer valid, but there are a couple of reasons why it is. I'll give one of the reasons why it's still valid is that because we're still using it. We're talking about it now. It may be debased, but generally it's still got currency. So if you was to go into the street and speak to somebody who doesn't necessarily know who's in charge or what they want, they would have heard through school probably left and right, especially in a place like America. It still is left and right. There's very rarely you get independent. You think about New Zealand. I mean, how many political parties were there at the last election? 13, 14? And we're in a small country. I mean, we're the size of the eastern seaboard of the States. Yeah. Well, the States is huge, but only has 2 parties. So really, although we say Democrat, Republican, there's many kind of shades within each of them.
Oh, absolutely.
But they artificially still say it's left and right.
Yeah. That's right, because I mean, according to some of our listeners, they would say that I'm right, not that I'm correct, but that I am right in terms of politics, and that wouldn't be correct because there are so many areas in which I'm left. I'm not right, but I have some views which may align well with the right, but I have many other views that would align very well with the left, and the majority of my views would probably be quite central. But I would probably describe myself as a social conservative. So I have a strong belief in us looking after people in society, but I also have a strong belief in the nation state, which would be always normally equated with a right-leaning political viewpoint. And I have a strong belief in that there are some basic things that the nation state should do, which would be law and order, defence of the realm, education, health, and you should be strong on those. And that often sits to the right. Many of those things sit well in the right basket. But then the other stuff, helping the poor, feeding the orphans, the widows, etc., how we can lift people out of poverty, how we can encourage people to not be driven to death through the slave driver of debt, that would be far more progressive and left-leaning. So I'm an enigma, Mark. I am an enigma.
Wrapped up in a riddle.
Wrapped up in a riddle, contained within a cluster of whirligig quackery. Yes, that would do.
I think you're right. I mean, you know me. If you were to ask me which one am I, and you would say for me, I would disagree. I can't stand us versus them. It's like if you say you're one thing, well, then you've created that you must be opposed to the other. What's never done, or very seldom, is let's work together and let's work for the benefit of our country. It's always they're wrong, they've screwed up for how many years in power, and now we're going to get it right. And you're going to go, from the very beginning, you're off at a bad start. And in fact, it's what I appreciated about what you said about your spiel when you went for the election. You said you're not going to make any promises, which is refreshingly blunt, but also right.
And surprisingly electable.
Exactly. And you're right, in terms of correct. We shouldn't be keep giving these false things that then they never happen. The whole point of utopia, it can never be reached. But I don't like the I'm left, I'm right, I'm centre. We are doing the benefit of the country. And also, it then means you've got to be part of a party that you don't necessarily agree with on everything. So that's amazing how many times we get people saying they didn't vote in line with the party. Well, what is it, a monolith?
Yeah, that's right. One of the things with local government is that it should be apolitical. So within the local government, if you can not be aligned to one of the sort of central government parties, national parties, I think that's a bonus because your job is there to represent the people that you serve in your community. That doesn't mean to say that you're always going to agree with everything they say, and it doesn't mean to say that you're always going to go into bat for everything that they want. But it does mean that you should be willing to sit down with them and try and understand them and understand why they want to do things. One of the things that really annoyed me about working in central government was the fact as soon as you make a comment that aligns with the left, then you're left. As soon as you make a comment that aligns with the right, you're right. And then it becomes about identity politics. And that's it. You are now identified as that. And it's like, no, everything is much more nuanced than that. And life is much more nuanced than that. We do not neatly sit in these little buckets, and nor should we. And what we should be willing to do is talk across the table to each other to reach consensus wherever possible. So working as strongly as you can with one another, doing as much as you can with one another to reach consensus. That's the whole idea. That's brilliant. That's what it's about, isn't it? You're doing it for your community. You're doing it for other people. You're not doing it for you. Too many people come into these roles, in my opinion, because they want a title. They want a tag over their name. They want to be seen as being somebody. And they don't come in with the attitude to serve, whereas I think that's what you should be doing.
I've got this book here. It's one of 9, and it's got an unusual title because it's about the Second World War, but it's called The Second Great War. It was written late 40s. It's fantastic. I'm reading this because I love World War II, and it's literally original pictures I've never seen before, very detailed from the British perspective. And what's noticeable about it is that when Britain went to war, both parties then became as one. Well, you could effectively criticise the government if you so wish, and that would have happened throughout the war because it's a democracy. But generally, all that nonsense, puerile nonsense and barracking that would have been there before war, ended. And for 5-6 years, everyone worked together. Well, it can be done then.
Yeah.
When there's a common cause, you can give up all this nonsense. And it's about time modern politicians saw it as the same. Because the way that this partisanship is taking a lot of countries is really to rack and ruin. No one seems to be working together.
And it's a sad indictment, isn't it, on the types of people that come into those positions. As a voter, as a member of the public, if you don't actually exercise your right to vote, you've got no skin in the game. Don't bitch and moan about who comes into power if you haven't got off your backside and actually put a little X in a box. You have got no room to say anything, mate. And the fact that, well, nothing will ever change and all the rest of it, well, no, maybe it won't. But your vote may make a significant difference. And at least if you use your voice, you have got the opportunity to critique and to criticise and to make comment. If you can't be bothered, then don't be bothered to moan about it either. I think it's wrong. Did you see that old boy at the Remembrance Sunday on the BBC, or where he was being interviewed? About 100 years old, a veteran from the British Armed Forces, and he just broke down on the television and said none of it was worth it when I see the crap state that everything is in. And I think to myself, well, people bled and died to give you freedoms, to give you the right to remove people from power through the ballot box. People fought for that and they died for it. And when you get a 100-year-old veteran there going, it just wasn't worth it. You think to yourself, we've really let the side down, haven't we?
Yeah,
we've let the side down. When you look at the world and in terms of politics, everything in the politics is driven by economics, isn't it? Whether you're left, centre or right, it's all got an economic flavour to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And going back, when you looked at perhaps the main axis of politics was all around class. So you had the workers versus the owners.
Yeah.
So you had those who had with those who hadn't. That was a very economic tie. The ones with, the ones without. The ones with the power in money, the ones without the power in money. But today, that's not quite the same, I don't think. It's more about culture, identity, values. They tend to be often the things which dominate. And they sort of come in contrast with things like nationalism versus cosmopolitanism, secularism versus faith, being somebody who's like regionally or locally focused versus somebody who's globally focused. But these things now, they cut across economic ties. So you can have economy driving both of those areas these days.
The left-right, which was based on economy, doesn't include things like security or the rights of people. And the problem with the politics, it's always based on what one group wants, opposed to the other. Well, where is everybody's rights then in all of that? Immigrants and the hate on them, identity politics, that's all it is now. To get the news, the more extreme you are, the more news you seem to get, because it's in the interest of like BBC or CNN to get people engaged, and they're going to get you angry. So they promote groups that normally wouldn't get attention, or certainly wouldn't in the past.
Everything is designed to get a response from people, and everything spins around money, spiralling people into a cesspit of fear so that they can be controlled. And the more you frighten people about their neighbour, the more you frighten people about what's going on down the street, the more you frighten people about this particular group of people, the more quickly you can stir up hatred towards them. And the more quickly you can remove them in the event that you need to, just like Mr. Hitler did in the Second World War, blaming the Jews for every wrong in Germany. Most Germans had Jewish people for neighbours. Most Jewish people were some of the hardest working, some of the most successful businessmen, some of the most prominent in society. They weren't the problem, not at all. But Hitler was able to whip up a whole degree of hatred against this particular people group. And we all know the absolute disaster that caused. Horrendous. And I'm really mindful of when I listen to any politician whipping up a frenzy around a people group. Doesn't matter what the people group is. Doesn't matter whether some people from that people group have done bad things. It doesn't matter. To stir everybody up like that, I don't think is useful. I don't think it's wise. and it certainly doesn't do a service to the people that you are there to serve.
Could you imagine a business, and let's imagine it's a big tall building, and right at the top we've got the meeting of the owner, CEO, and all of his advisors, and they're having their monthly meeting, and the CEO has brought in new faces.
Yeah.
And from the get-go, they start fear-mongering about the competition or hating those that are foreign, based abroad, and they're coming in taking our shares. And everything's based on negativity. I'm not sure that business would work very well very quickly. It could happen, and it has happened in businesses, we know that. But we tend not to hear about it because unless you're a shareholder and you go to the annual AGM, you won't necessarily know about the infighting and all that kind of stuff. But we are all shareholders in our country.
Yes.
And we get to hear these people every single day. And I am ashamed with the way that they promote themselves, are promoted by the news, and then get voted in.
Yeah.
More than once. It's like, what have we become? Are we voting in a circus? Is that what we want, to be entertained?
And I'm afraid that in some cases, I've got no doubt that people do just want to be entertained. They see politics as some sort of real-life doco fly-on-the-wall show. There's some very serious men and women who go into politics for the right reasons, I've got no doubt. There are others who go into it for all the wrong reasons. There are others who just stumble into it for no reason at all, and I'll probably put myself into that latter category. Left, right, centre. I'm not 100% sure that is, in our 21st century, the best way of looking at things. The way that I think that I would like politics to go, and I don't know if it will ever go like this, and I'm sure political scientists have thought about this and brought their incredibly powerful minds to this, in a way that I would never be able to do, but it's working more on an ethical framework of politics. So you have stewardship, recognising that we are here to steward stuff, and interdependence. The stewardship builds into what we are taking charge of, how we look after the things that we are given. And the interdependence is how do we connect across things. If you ground your political thinking in that sort of ethical approach, rather than an ideological identity political approach, then stewardship would cover things like the planet, the environment. How do we look after this incredible bit of rock that we're floating around on in the middle of the outer space? How do we look after that? How do we steward it well? And then you couple that with, I'm interconnected with all of these other people. There is a dignity of that person that I'm talking to. There is a dignity of that person opposite me. So I interact with them in a way which is respectful of the dignity that they hold, the dignity of every person. And then we have got a shared responsibility in all of those things, every one of us, to look after where we are and to treat people in the best possible way. Doesn't mean say you're not going to fall out. Doesn't mean say you're not going to get into spats every now and again. But it does mean understanding that as humans, we are all interconnected somehow. We have a shared planet. We have finite resources, land masses that we all live on. So how can we best interact with each other and interconnect with each other in a way that's just going to benefit each other, rather than the strong man lining up a row of warships and storming the beaches and killing all of the people that are on the shore?
That's the good thing about here in New Zealand, although it's not fully appreciated or even known about, but the Maori have a concept of kaitiakitanga. That you are protecting the planet.
That's
because
right.
if you don't, your kids aren't going to have a good life.
It's that guardianship and stewardship.
But this is something you touched on, ethics, and of course I taught ethics in the UK. Most countries don't teach it. So if you're not teaching kids about ethics, they're growing up not knowing it even exists or even why it's important. And because no one in the political sphere is often talking about it, unless they're forced to, or admit wrongdoing, which then it becomes a legal concept rather than ethical in itself, they don't know what to look out for. They don't know if someone's saying it, that will be a good person to put in charge because they're ethically minded. There's been a move in the last 20 years in politics towards toxic masculinity, where you've got to be brash and you've got to be arrogant and you've got to be showing your wealth, otherwise you've got no status. That would not have been tolerated anywhere during the Cold War period in the West.
No, probably not. We need to look at things a little bit differently. I don't know that the labels left, right are particularly useful anymore, only in a pejorative sense. You know, if you just want to have been bash somebody, then yeah, you put them left or you put them right, or you want to whatever extreme you want to go to. I think that the future for politics and for good governance, wherever that sits, is all about how do you integrate the very best aspects of what would have been seen as traditionally left, the very best aspects of what would have been traditionally seen as right. How do you integrate those incredibly powerful concepts so you end up with very strong economics, great growth, great economic vitality, but you also temper that with social justice so that there is a good stewardship of all of the economic vitality and the growth that you make, and you feed that back into your society so there is social justice, so there aren't people who've been living on the streets having to drag their shopping trolley around with them with all of their stuff in, because the money flows in such a way that we look out for one another within our community. You look at all of the great things around innovation, all of the incredible stuff that's going on at the moment, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's AI, whatever it might be, all of this incredible innovation, we go, that's great, but we now need to couple that with being responsible. How do we then use that not to harm, not to cause problems in the future for either us or for the generations to come, but how do we actually do that responsibly? And then I guess the final thing for me would be, I'm a big believer in freedom of speech. I'm a big believer in individual freedom, that we should be absolutely free as we possibly can be. But the flip side of that is recognizing that we have a common shared humanity, and we need as a collective to steward the things well that we've got. So that means that sometimes you have to adapt and flex with the freedoms that you're using today to help the collective tomorrow, and then you dial it back. But it's a constant flow, an ebb and flow of these concepts, rather than just rigid. And maybe that's going to be the way that politicians in the future will be able to work. I would like to think they would. I don't hold a lot of hope, because it's easier to fall into a camp.
Yes. It's very difficult to get any system that works. The one that we could possibly look into more is the Swiss cantonal system. They give the cantons quite a lot of subsidiarity, I think it's called, where each canton will be dealing with certain things rather than putting it up always above.
Yeah.
Because too much power above is stifling.
Yeah.
So they share it. Now, there are pros and cons with that.
Yeah.
There's too many departments trying to get thing of the pie. What if one canton's small and one's large and all that kind of stuff? But they've worked peacefully on this system for a few hundred years now, and no one ever talks about Switzerland having any problems.
No, and subsidiarity is something that I'm very familiar with from my time in the police from many, many, many years ago. It's where you allow the operational response to be carried out as close to the coalface as possible with as little interference from higher powers as possible. So it's about empowering local decision making. I believe that that's a brilliant principle. Decision making should be devolved down to its most practical, feasible point, with less interference from central government. I think that there are some things that central government should deal with and do, and then they should get their fingers out of the rest of our lives. They don't need to tell me how to think. They don't need to tell me what I need to do. They don't need to tell me where I need to be. They don't need to tell me how far I can drive my car. What they need to do is look after our health, our well-being in terms of medical treatments. They need to look after the defence of the realm. They need to educate young people effectively and properly. And they need to be willing to engage like that with law and order. They don't need to indoctrinate.
And it will also get rid of these personalities that seem to court the cameras.
Yeah, of course.
Because they're in high office, they're in charge of vast budgets, and it goes to the head. It's all an ego, WANK.
Oh, totally. You end up with people in power at these high levels who then recruit other people of the same ilk to follow them into power. And so nothing ever changes. Just look at the problems with New Zealand police at the moment. And you think to yourself, how can this happen? It's nonsense, mate.
If you look at politics, it gets to such a high pitch, it can't sustain itself. As the voting public kind of wise up and realise it's all a show, because people keep promising all this stuff and it never happens. People say only they know and then nothing happens, which may explain the lack of people voting. I think in New Zealand at the last election, the one that you were in, the round for councils, it was only a third possible voters.
About 39%, I think, of the voting turnout, which is just ridiculous.
So the current model is switching people off, but eventually the people who have to vote will have had enough of it.
They will have had enough of it. And my concern is that when people get put into power, and I'm not talking about local governments, but I'm talking about centralised power, they don't want to let go of it.
No.
And that means that while they're in it, they'll do everything they can to retain it. And that can often undermine the freedoms and the liberties that the voting public have then of getting rid of people. One of the fears is in the US at the moment with Trump, that something will happen which will allow him to stay in power for longer, this whole no more kings type of movement. Whether there's any credibility to any of that, that's a completely different discussion point altogether. But that's the fear. And that fear is being whipped up by the left. And I'm thinking to myself, why whip it up? Just watch and see and actually deal with what you've got and work across people. I mean, democracy is all we've got. I love that quote by Winston Churchill. Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. And he's got a point. The best form of government is the one that you can get rid of after a few years.
Yeah. But true democracy, that's different to the democracy that we get. We get representative democracy.
Yeah.
So someone is voted in to represent us, but it's not necessarily the person you voted for.
No, it's
and
not.
True democracy is different, and we don't have that. That's what the Greeks tried, but we can't do that in the modern world. So we don't really get the proper democracy. We get a version of it.
Yeah, but I guess even the version, even the facsimile of it is better than some of the other crap.
Absolutely. But far too many democracies will crumble, we have seen, quite easily if a demagogue comes through and wrests power. There's always a weak point in every political system.
Yeah.
And there's always stresses from someone to see whether they can topple it. It's a shame.
This is the world of humanity, right?
Yeah, which is another thing that we talk about quite often on the other channel.
At our base level, Mark, we are animals. And in the animal kingdom, the strong rise to the top to lead the pack.
That's right, yeah.
The only way that we can ever change that is to recognise that we are not just animals, that there is a spiritual component to us as well. And then when you factor that in and you temper the animalistic impulse to rise to the top and take charge, and you realise actually this isn't about me because there's a spiritual aspect that governs all of that, then you bow to the spiritual truth, and that then affects and suppresses the animalistic advance for the better of others around you.
It's far better than some systems that we could have gone down and suffered with, but it does need, I think, an overhaul. But more importantly, it's ourselves realising that we're not against each other. You know, there's more to life than that.
Oh, absolutely. Be willing to just engage. Be willing to talk to people, and particularly talk to people that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
Because the more you can build up your understanding, the better. Seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. So, you little commie socialist, get back into your little commie pinko corner.
Yes, because you believe that I am left.
The little woke lefty, because I know people like me talking about woke.
Da tovarich.
Nostrovia. See you later, mate.